The year 1888 felt less like a chronological marker and more like an immutable sentence for Eleanor Vance. Her world, a meticulously polished cage of societal expectation and familial duty, was defined by the cool marble of her father's Belgravia mansion and the suffocating weight of her impending engagement to Lord Harrington. Every morning, the clatter of silver against porcelain at breakfast served as a grim reminder of the perfectly orchestrated life laid out before her. She was a prize, an ornament, destined to cement alliances and perpetuate legacy, a truth that chafed against her spirit with relentless, quiet agony. Today, however, offered a brief, illicit respite, a visit to the Royal Academy of Arts, ostensibly to appraise a new collection for her father's private acquisitions, but truly, to simply breathe. The gallery was a sanctuary of hushed whispers and reverent gazes, a stark contrast to the boisterous clamor of London outside. Eleanor moved with unpracticed grace, her silk dress rustling faintly, her hand delicately gloved, trailing along a cool balustrade. Her eyes, however, did not linger on the grand canvases depicting heroic battles or idyllic landscapes that usually captivated her peers. Instead, they were drawn, almost instinctively, to a quiet corner where a young man sat on a low stool, utterly absorbed. He was sketching, his concentration so absolute that it seemed to form a visible aura around him. His brow was furrowed, in intense focus, a lock of dark hair falling across his forehead, smudged with charcoal. There was a raw, untamed energy about him, a stark antithesis to the constrained elegance of her own existence. He wasn't looking at the celebrated marble bust of a Roman emperor that dominated the alcove. Rather, his gaze was fixed on the nuanced play of light and shadow on the drapery of a lesser-known classical sculpture, finding beauty in its forgotten folds. Eleanor paused, an invisible force holding her captive. She watched the swift, confident strokes of his charcoal, the way his fingers, unblemished by the white gloves she wore, moved with a craftsman's precision and an artist's passion. There was a profound honesty in his posture, a directness that both startled and fascinated her. He was completely himself, without pretense or performance, a stark contrast to the carefully constructed personas that inhabited her daily life. Suddenly, as if sensing her presence, his head lifted. Their eyes met across the hushed expanse of the gallery. For a fleeting moment, the cacophony of her internal world, the expectations, the dread, the loneliness silenced his eyes. A startling shade of green-gray held a depth she rarely encountered, a spark of intelligence, and perhaps a hint of unspoken longing that mirrored her own. It wasn't a challenging gaze, nor an impertinent one, but rather an acknowledging glance. A brief flicker of recognition between two souls momentarily stripped of their social veneers. A blush bloomed on Eleanor's cheeks, unexpected and unwelcome, but undeniably potent. She quickly averted her gaze, her heart thrumming in erratic rhythm against her ribs. She moved on, pretending to examine a landscape painting, her mind no longer on the art. The image of his face, the intensity of his gaze, the quiet power of his hands, had imprinted itself on her. Who was he? A student, a struggling artist. His clothes, though neat, lacked the sartorial polish of a gentleman of her class. He was undoubtedly from a different world, a world where passion might take precedence over pedigree, where hands were stained with creation rather than idle luxury. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. She felt a pull, a curiosity that transcended mere aesthetic appreciation. It was a recognition of something kindred, a shared yearning for authenticity. Eleanor's companion, Miss Albright, a formidable woman hired to ensure Eleanor's propriety, noticed her distraction. "Eleanor, dear, are you quite well? You seem rather flushed." Eleanor forced a smile, a practiced mask. "Quite, Miss Albright. The room is a trifle warm, that is all." She did not dare to look back, though every fiber of her being urged her to steal another glance at the sketching figure. The brief encounter had shaken something loose within her, a fragile seed of rebellion against the destiny she had long accepted. It was a dangerous thought, a thrilling tremor in the carefully constructed edifice of her life. She knew, with a certainty that chilled and excited her, that this brief, anonymous exchange had irrevocably altered the landscape of her interior world. The gilded cage, for the first time, felt less like a sanctuary, and more like a prison whose bars had suddenly become visible, stark and confining. She left the gallery, leaving a piece of her carefully guarded composure behind, carrying with her the indelible impression of eyes that had seen beyond her social standing, if only for a moment. The memory of the artist in the gallery clung to Eleanor like a persistent, unwelcome perfume, yet its scent was intoxicating. The following days at the Vance estate were a blur of social calls, fittings for her trousseau, and discussions of wedding plans that felt increasingly detached from her own desires. Each polite smile, each vapid conversation about decor or guest lists, amplified the quiet desperation growing within her. Her engagement to Lord Harrington, a man whose most defining characteristic was his impeccably tailored suits and a rather dull, predictable charm, loomed larger, casting an ever-present shadow. She found herself retreating to the solitude of her private sitting room, her gaze often drifting to the window, searching for a face she barely knew, a connection she dared not acknowledge. A week after their encounter, Eleanor found herself making a decision born of impulsive longing. Using the pretext of seeking a unique birthday gift for her aunt, she instructed her coachman to take her to a less fashionable quarter of the city, an area known for its smaller, independent art dealers and studios rather than the grand establishments patronized by her family. Her maid, a stern-faced woman named Agnes, eyed her with unconcealed suspicion, but Eleanor feigned an interest in bohemian curiosities with enough conviction to pass muster. Her heart, however, was thrumming with a different kind of curiosity, a clandestine hope she scarcely dared to name. She found him in a small, unassuming gallery tucked away on a cobbled side street. It was nothing like the grandiose halls of the Royal Academy. Here, the scent of turpentine and oil paints hung heavy in the air, a more authentic, visceral aroma. His name, Thomas Miller, was discreetly displayed next to a series of vibrant street scenes, bustling markets, foggy riverbanks, sun-drenched parks. These were not the academic studies she was accustomed to. They throbbed with life, capturing the raw energy and unspoken stories of ordinary Londoners. One painting, in particular, seized her attention, a portrait of an elderly flower seller, her face etched with a lifetime of struggle, yet her eyes held an unyielding spark of dignity. It was the same depth she had seen in the artist's gaze. It was his work. As she stood before it, lost in its emotional resonance, a figure emerged from a back room. It was him, Thomas Miller. He looked surprised, perhaps a little guarded, seeing a woman of her obvious social standing in his humble establishment. His hair was still slightly disheveled, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms smudged with paint. He carried a small stack of canvases. "May I assist you, madam?" he asked, his voice low and cultured, belying his unassuming appearance. There was a genuine politeness, a lack of servility that Eleanor found refreshing, unsettling. Eleanor felt a blush rise again, but this time, she met his gaze directly. "Mr. Miller, I presume, I greatly admire your work. This piece, in particular," she gestured to the flower seller. "It possesses a remarkable truth." His eyes, those same green-gray eyes, softened almost imperceptibly. "Thank you, madam. It's a face that tells 1,000 stories, isn't it?" He did not comment on their previous encounter, but Eleanor felt the silent acknowledgement hang in the air between them, a fragile thread woven from a shared moment. They spoke for nearly an hour, not about the birthday gift she claimed to be seeking, but about art, about light, about the overlooked beauty of the city, about the soul behind the paint. Eleanor found herself speaking with an openness she rarely afforded anyone, certainly not her fiancé or her family. Thomas listened intently, his answers thoughtful, infused with a quiet passion. He spoke of capturing the essence of life, the fleeting emotions, the inherent dignity in every individual, regardless of their station. He saw the world with a sensitivity and depth that resonated deeply with her own unspoken perceptions. He wasn't afraid to speak of struggle, of beauty found in grit, of the artist's solitary quest for truth. It was a conversation that felt less like an exchange of pleasantries and more like the unfurling of a hidden landscape within her own soul. As the hour drew to a close, a subtle tension began to creep into the atmosphere. The world outside the gallery, with its rigid rules and unyielding expectations, began to press in. Eleanor knew she couldn't linger much longer. I must take my leave, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice a little breathy. "Thank you for your time, and for sharing your beautiful vision." He nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "The pleasure was entirely mine, madame." He did not ask for her name, nor did she offer it. yet a silent understanding passed between them. As she stepped back into her carriage, the vibrant colors of his paintings and the profound sincerity of his words seemed to have infused her own drab world with a new, dangerous hue. She had found a kindred spirit, a mirror to her own suppressed desires. And the realization was both terrifying and exquisitely liberating. The gilded cage, she now understood, was not merely a physical constraint, but a spiritual one, and she had just found a tiny, perilous crack in its polished surface. The small gallery on the cobbled side street became Eleanor's clandestine sanctuary. Under the guise of commissioning a series of landscape studies for her family's country estate, a project she carefully fabricated and exaggerated, she began to visit Thomas Miller's atelier. Her maid, Agnes, ever watchful, grew increasingly suspicious. But Eleanor's well-rehearsed excuses and a carefully cultivated air of aristocratic eccentricity usually quelled her immediate inquiries. The truth, however, was far more exhilarating and far more dangerous. Each visit to Thomas's studio was a plunge into a world utterly unlike her own, a world vibrant with color, alive with creative chaos, and, most importantly, free from the suffocating expectations of her class. Thomas's atelier was an attic room, surprisingly spacious, bathed in the soft, diffused light that filtered through a large skylight. The air hummed with the scent of turpentine linseed oil, and old canvas, a fragrance Eleanor found infinitely more appealing than the rosewater and polished wood that permeated her own home. Canvases in various stages of completion leaned against every available surface. Sketches littered a large paint-splattered table, and brushes of all sizes bristled from earthenware pots. It was a place of work, of passion, of creation, and Eleanor felt an immediate, profound sense of belonging there, a stark contrast to the performative existence she led outside. Their conversations grew deeper with each passing visit. They spoke of art, of course, but also of philosophy, of poetry, of the social injustices of their era, of dreams and disappointments. Thomas possessed an intellect that matched his artistic talent and a sensitivity that belied his humble origins. He saw beyond her wealth and title, past the elaborate dresses and the carefully constructed facade, to the woman beneath, starved for genuine connection. Eleanor, in turn, found herself stripped of her defenses, revealing fragments of her true self, her longing for purpose, her quiet despair over her predetermined future. One afternoon, while Thomas was meticulously mixing a shade of cerulean, Eleanor confessed, "Sometimes, Mr. Miller, I feel as though I am living someone else's life, a life meticulously crafted by others, with little room for my own desires." She spoke softly, her gaze fixed on a half-finished portrait of a dockworker, his face etched with hardship and resilience. Thomas paused, his palette knife hovering over the paints. "Is it so very different for any of us, Miss Vance?" he replied, his voice gentle. "We are all, in a way, molded by the currents of our birth, our circumstances. The challenge, perhaps, is to find the space within that molding to forge our own truth." His words resonated profoundly, a balm to her troubled spirit. He showed her his sketchbooks, filled with rapid studies of everyday life. Children playing in the street, an old man reading a newspaper on a park bench, the fluid grace of horses pulling carriages. These were not grand subjects, but each captured a fleeting moment of humanity, with exquisite tenderness and insight. Eleanor was captivated. "You see so much," she whispered, tracing a finger lightly over a charcoal drawing of a lamplighter. "Things most people pass by without a second glance." Thomas looked at her, his green-gray eyes soft. "Perhaps," he said, "it is simply a matter of truly looking, of allowing oneself to see." In that moment, surrounded by the raw beauty of his work, Eleanor felt an intimacy growing between them that transcended polite conversation. It was a communion of souls, a dangerous, thrilling connection that defied all social boundaries. He would share stories of his struggles, of long nights spent working odd jobs to afford paint and canvas, of the relentless pursuit of his craft despite the skepticism of others. Eleanor listened, her heart aching with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. His world was harsh, demanding, yet he approached it with an unyielding spirit and an unwavering belief in the power of art. Compared to the gilded idleness of her own life, his existence felt infinitely more meaningful, more real. The contrast was stark, and it only intensified her burgeoning feelings for him. As the weeks turned into months, their professional relationship slowly, inexorably, began to blur. A hand would linger a moment too long when passing a sketch, their gazes would hold for an extra beat. A silent current of unspoken affection flowing between them. The danger of their meetings became an intoxicating element, heightening the thrill of their connection. Each farewell was a poignant separation, a return to their disparate worlds. Yet the promise of the next meeting was a beacon in the monotonous landscape of Eleanor's life. She knew, with a growing certainty that chilled and thrilled her, that she was falling in love with Thomas Miller, a man with no title, no fortune, and everything to lose. The chasm between their worlds grew more apparent with each passing day Eleanor spent at Thomas's studio. While the artistic commissions provided a plausible alibi, the escalating emotional intensity of their encounters demanded a more private, more constant form of communication. It was Thomas who first suggested it, hesitantly, one late afternoon, as Eleanor prepared to leave. "Miss Vance," he began, his voice a little lower than usual, should a thought for the landscapes ever strike you between visits, a note might suffice to convey it." He offered the suggestion with a studied casualness, his eyes, however, betraying the deeper implication. Eleanor's heart fluttered in response. A note, a letter, a means to bridge the gulf. Thus began their clandestine correspondence, a fragile lifeline woven with ink and parchment. The first letters were meticulously formal, discussing art, framing their true sentiments within the safe confines of aesthetic discourse. Eleanor would dispatch her notes via a trusted, elderly flower vendor, Mrs. Gable, who often frequented the Vance estate gardens. Mrs. Gable, with her knowing eyes and discreet smile, became their silent accomplice, an unwitting Cupid in the harsh London labyrinth. Thomas, in turn, would send his replies through the same channel, often enclosing a small sketch, a bird in flight, a quiet street corner that held a coded message only Eleanor would understand. As their trust deepened, so did the content of their letters. The formal language began to fray, revealing the raw edges of their longing. Eleanor confessed her suffocating sense of duty, the emptiness of her privileged life, the fear of a future without passion. "My days here are but gilded minutes, Thomas," she wrote in a trembling hand, each one an echo of the one before. "It is only in the promise of your words, and the memory of your studio, that I feel truly alive." Her words were a desperate plea, a stark admission of a love that was growing dangerously profound. Thomas's replies were equally revealing. Though imbued with a working man's practicality alongside an artist's soul, he spoke of his own dreams, his burning ambition to create, but also of the stark realities of his class, the insurmountable barriers that seemed to divide them. "The beauty I chase with my brush often mocks me with the truth of its fleeting nature," he wrote back, his handwriting bold and expressive. "How can one hope to capture eternity when one's hands are bound by the chains of circumstance? Yet, your spirit, Eleanor, fuels a hope I never dared to possess." He addressed her by her first name, a profound intimacy exchanged only on paper, a liberty that would be unthinkable in public. The act of writing itself became a dangerous pleasure. Eleanor would steal moments in her boudoir late at night, the gaslight casting long, dancing shadows, her pen scratching across the vellum, pouring out her heart. Each word was a risk, each sentence a betrayal of the expectations placed upon her. The fear of discovery was a constant, icy companion, yet the need to connect with Thomas, to feel his presence through his words, eclipsed all caution. She imagined him reading her letters, his brow furrowed in thought, his lips perhaps curving into that gentle, knowing smile. The letters were their secret world, a sanctuary where their love could unfurl without the constraints of society. One particular letter from Thomas contained a small, pressed violet, carefully placed between the folds of the parchment. "A humble offering from a park bench," he had written, "where I often sketch and ponder. Perhaps one day, our paths may cross there, not by chance, but by design." The simple flower was a potent symbol, a coded invitation. Eleanor clutched it to her chest, her heart soaring with a dangerous hope. The park, a public space, yet one vast enough to offer pockets of privacy. It was a brazen suggestion, a step beyond the discreet visits to his studio, an acknowledgement of their desire to be together. Away from the pretense of art commissions, the exchange of letters became the rhythm of her week, a secret language shared only by them. Her engagement to Lord Harrington, which had once felt like an impending doom, now seemed an insurmountable obstacle, a mockery of the profound connection she felt with Thomas. The ink that flowed from her pen was not merely a medium for words, it was the lifeblood of a forbidden desire, a desperate articulation of a love that, if discovered, would would dismantle her entire world. She tucked his latest letter into a hidden compartment of her jewel box, its presence a warm, perilous secret nestled amongst the cold glitter of diamonds and pearls. The violet, pressed and fragile, remained on her dressing table, a visible testament to her daring, a silent promise of future stolen moments. The pressed violet, a silent invitation, had ignited a fierce resolve in Eleanor. The park, Regent's Park, vast and sprawling, became the stage for their next clandestine act. It was a perilous choice, a public space, yet large enough to offer secluded pathways and shaded groves, a labyrinth where two souls could, for a fleeting time, lose themselves. Eleanor orchestrated her escape with meticulous planning, feigning a sudden interest in botany, insisting on long, solitary strolls to sketch rare flowers, a new eccentricity that her family, accustomed to her artistic whims, reluctantly indulged. Miss Albright, ever present, was strategically dispatched to a distant conservatory, convinced of Eleanor's need for quiet contemplation. Their first meeting in the park was an exercise in exquisite tension. Eleanor, dressed in a demure walking dress, her parasol twirling idly, arrived at the designated bench near the ornamental lake precisely at the agreed-upon hour. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped within her corset. Every rustle of leaves, every distant laugh, felt like an imminent discovery. Then she saw him, leaning against the gnarled trunk of an old oak, seemingly lost in thought, a sketchbook in hand. He wasn't sketching, he was waiting. His eyes, when they met hers, held a mixture of apprehension and profound relief. "Mr. Miller," Eleanor managed, her voice a little breathless, her hand clutching her parasol tightly. "Miss Vance." His voice was a soft murmur, yet it vibrated with an unspoken emotion that instantly calmed her frayed nerves. They walked, slowly at first, along a secluded path winding deeper into a less frequented section of the park. The air was soft, laden with the scent of damp earth and blooming roses. The gentle murmur of distant city sounds faded, replaced by the rustle of their footsteps and the whisper of their voices. Their conversation, unburdened by the pretense of art commissions, flowed with an ease that startled Eleanor. They spoke of their childhoods, of books they loved, of the injustices they observed in the world. Eleanor found herself confiding fears and hopes she had never dared articulate to anyone, not even her closest childhood friend. Thomas listened with an intensity that made her feel truly seen, truly heard. He shared his own aspirations, his struggles against the rigid class structures, his unwavering belief in a future where talent, not birthright, defined a man. His hand, as they walked past a particularly dense thicket, brushed hers, a fleeting, electric contact that sent a jolt through her. They found a secluded bench beneath a weeping willow, its branches creating a verdant curtain around them. Here, shielded from prying eyes, the true depth of their connection unfurled. Thomas spoke of the frustration of his ambition, the societal walls that seemed to rise higher with every step he took. "It is a constant battle, Eleanor, to simply exist, to create, when the world demands you fit into its preordained boxes," he admitted, his gaze distant, fixed on the shimmering lake. Eleanor reached out, her gloved hand resting lightly on his arm. "And what of those of us already within the gilded box, Thomas?" she whispered, her voice laced with pain. "Some cages are simply more ornate, but no less confining." His eyes met hers then, a profound understanding passing between them. The unspoken words hung in the air. "We are both trapped, but together, perhaps, we can find a way." In that moment, the barriers of class and expectation dissolved, leaving only two souls yearning for connection. He slowly, deliberately, took her hand, his fingers warm and strong against her gloved palm. It was a simple gesture, yet it was an act of audacious defiance. A silent declaration of a love that dared to challenge everything. A shiver ran through Eleanor, a mixture of fear and ecstatic joy. They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, speaking little, simply reveling in the intoxicating intimacy of their shared silence. The world outside, with its rigid rules and watchful eyes, felt impossibly distant. Here, in this verdant labyrinth, they were simply Eleanor and Thomas, two people in love, stealing moments of perilous happiness as the sun began its descent, casting long, golden shadows across the park. The inevitability of their parting weighed heavily. "I must go," Eleanor said, her voice barely a whisper, pulling her hand away reluctantly. Thomas nodded, his expression somber. "Until our next stolen moment, Eleanor." He watched her walk away, his gaze lingering until her figure disappeared among the trees. The sweetness of their communion was now tinged with the bitter knowledge of the danger they courted. Yet the memory of his touch, the honesty of his gaze, affirmed the love that was blossoming, impossibly, gloriously, in the shadow of ruin. Each stolen moment with Thomas in the park, each clandestine letter, sharpened Eleanor's awareness of the gilded cage that was her life. Her impending marriage to Lord Harrington, once a distant, inevitable arrangement, now felt like a crushing weight, a golden chain tightening around her spirit. The wedding was set for late autumn, only a few months away, and the preparations escalated with a relentless, celebratory fervor that felt like a mockery of her internal turmoil. Dresses were chosen, menus debated, guest lists refined, each detail a nail in the coffin of her personal freedom. Lord Harrington, oblivious to the tempest raging within Eleanor, continued his courtship with a studied, almost perfunctory charm. He spoke of investments, of property, of social engagements, his conversation a polished veneer over a shallow depth. He was a suitable match. Everyone agreed, handsome enough, wealthy, with an impeccable lineage. He represented everything Eleanor was expected to desire, yet his touch, when he took her hand in public, felt cold and alien. His dutiful kisses on her cheek left no warmth, only a lingering sense of despair. She observed him with a detached clinicality, noting the precise parting of his hair, the meticulous knot of his cravat, the predictable opinions he offered on art or politics. He was a perfect specimen of his class, and utterly devoid of the passion, the genuine curiosity, the profound depth that drew her to Thomas. Evenings at the Vance mansion were filled with society gatherings, formal dinners where Eleanor was presented as the blushing bride-to-be. She smiled, she nodded, she made polite conversation, her mind often miles away, replaying a quiet word from Thomas, recalling the warmth of his hand, imagining the vibrant chaos of his studio. The contrast was agonizing. She would gaze at Lord Harrington across a glittering dining table, surrounded by the stifling opulence of her world, and feel a profound sense of isolation. The jewels on her neck felt like shackles, the silk of her gown a shroud. One evening, during a particularly lavish ball hosted by Eleanor found herself alone for a brief moment on a secluded balcony, seeking air. The sounds of laughter and music drifted from within, mocking her silent anguish. Lord Harrington found her there, offering a perfectly timed compliment on her gown and a possessive squeeze of her arm. "You look exquisite tonight, my dear. The envy of every woman here," he murmured, his gaze sweeping over her with a proprietorial air. "Soon, all this will be yours, and you, mine." His words, intended to be reassuring, sent a chill down her spine. The all this felt like a prison sentence, and the you, mine was a stark reminder of the ultimate forfeiture of herself. Eleanor tried, subtly at first, to voice her anxieties to her mother. "Mama, perhaps we should reconsider the urgency of the wedding. There is much to arrange, and I feel overwhelmed." Her mother, Lady Vance, a formidable woman forged in the crucible of Victorian society, merely patted her hand. "Nonsense, darling. Every bride feels a touch of nerves. It is perfectly natural. Lord Harrington is an excellent catch, and the families have waited long enough. Your duty is clear." Duty. The word was a heavy stone, anchoring her to a fate she despised. There was no room for discussion, no space for personal feeling in the grand machinery of their social standing. Her letters to Thomas became increasingly desperate, filled with the raw ache of her situation. "The walls are closing in. Thomas, I feel as though I am suffocating," she wrote one night, her tears blurring the ink. "Each day brings me closer to a life that feels like a lie. How can I possibly choose duty over the only truth my heart has ever known?" She agonized over the implications of her love for him. If she broke her engagement without a scandal-free reason, she would bring disgrace upon her family, lose her inheritance, become a social outcast. If their affair was discovered, the consequences for both of them would be catastrophic. For her, utter ruin. For him, the complete destruction of his nascent career and reputation, perhaps even worse. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, seeing not Eleanor Vance, the eligible debutante, but a ghost-like figure, her eyes shadowed with a growing desperation. The weight of expectation was an invisible crown of thorns, pressing deeper with every passing hour. She understood, with chilling clarity, the true meaning of losing everything. It was not just about wealth or status. It was about losing her very self, her capacity for joy, her right to choose. And in the face of such profound loss, the thought of Thomas, his vibrant art, his empathetic gaze, became not merely a comfort, but an urgent, terrifying beacon of hope, pulling her towards an unimaginable precipice. The desperation that had consumed Eleanor transformed, slowly, into a fragile, fierce hope. It was a hope born of their shared dreams, painted in the clandestine hours of moonlight and whispered in stolen moments in the park. The future she had once resigned herself to one of predictable opulence and emotional barrenness with Lord Harrington now felt utterly unbearable. With Thomas, she began to glimpse another possibility. A life less grand, perhaps, but infinitely richer in spirit and passion. This vision, however faint, became her anchor against the storm of her impending wedding. Their conversations grew, increasingly bold, their shared fantasies about a life together no longer just idle dreams but tentative, whispered plans. They spoke of leaving London, of finding a small cottage by the sea, or in a quiet country village, where Thomas could paint and Eleanor could finally find purpose beyond social engagements. It would be simple, Eleanor, Thomas had said one afternoon, his voice soft but firm, as they sat hidden by the dense foliage of the park. No grand balls, no gilded carriages, but there would be light and honesty, and a lifetime of canvases to fill. His words painted a vivid picture that resonated deeply with the yearning within her own soul. Eleanor found herself imagining the details, waking to the smell of paint and fresh coffee, tending a small garden, perhaps even reading aloud to Thomas as he worked. It was a life devoid of the social glitter she was born into, yet it sparkled with the promise of authentic joy and genuine partnership. She confessed her fears, her ingrained deference to her family's wishes, the terror of severing all ties. My entire world would fall away. Thomas, she had whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Everything I have ever known. How can one simply step into the unknown? Thomas, ever the pragmatist with an artist's heart, understood her terror. It is not a step into nothing, Eleanor, but a step towards something true. He reassured her, his hand gently covering hers. We would build it, piece by piece, with our own hands, with our own hearts. It would be ours, truly ours, for the first time. He spoke of his modest savings, enough to sustain them for a time while he established himself as a commissioned portraitist or landscape artist in a new location. His determination, his quiet strength, became the bedrock upon which Eleanor dared to place her dreams. They pored over maps in his studio, ostensibly looking for landscape inspiration, but secretly tracing potential escape routes. They discussed the logistics, the practicalities, the immense risks. Leaving London discreetly would require meticulous planning, a network of silent assistants, and a large dose of sheer luck. The scandal of a runaway bride, especially one from Eleanor's prominent family, would be monumental. Lord Harrington's pride would be wounded, his family's reputation tarnished, and the Vances would be embroiled in a social catastrophe that could cost them dearly in influence and standing. For Thomas, it meant abandoning his burgeoning career in London, becoming a fugitive from a wrathful society. Yet the more they spoke, the more real their shared dream became, eclipsing the enormity of the consequences. Their love, born in secrecy and nurtured in stolen moments, was now blossoming into a defiant force, demanding a future. Eleanor began to mentally divest herself of her possessions, imagining which few cherished items she might take, which she would leave behind. The thought of abandoning her family, of betraying her parents' trust, was a sharp, painful ache. Yet the alternative, a lifetime of emotional suffocation, felt like a slow, agonizing death. One evening, after returning from a particularly strained dinner with Lord Harrington, Eleanor wrote to Thomas, her hand steady, her resolve hardening. I have made my choice, my dearest Thomas. This gilded prison holds no allure for me. My future, my true future, lies with you. Tell me when and how. I am yours. She sealed the letter with a trembling hand, the wax feeling warm against her skin, a burning symbol of her commitment. The fear was still present, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a profound sense of liberation, a fierce joy that she was finally reclaiming her own life. The future, though uncertain and fraught with peril, now shimmered with the vivid, intoxicating colors of their shared love, painted in the ethereal glow of moonlight and defiant hope. The audacious decision to forge a life together, made in the hushed intimacy of the atelier and the verdant seclusion of the park, brought with it an electric thrill. yet also cast a lengthening shadow of suspicion. Eleanor's heightened spirits, a buoyancy she could no longer entirely suppress, began to draw unwanted attention. Her family, once content with her quiet compliance, now noticed a subtle shift, a new light in her eyes that seemed incongruous with the demure preparations for her wedding. Her maid, Agnes, a woman whose loyalty was to the Vance household above all else, grew increasingly observant, her gaze following Eleanor with a scrutinizing intensity. It began with small things: a prolonged absence from the drawing room during scheduled social calls, an unexpected flush to Eleanor's cheeks after returning from a supposed botanical excursion, the subtle scent of turpentine that occasionally clung to her gloves despite her best efforts to air them. Agnes, with decades of experience serving the gentry, recognized the signs of clandestine activity, though the nature of it remained a perplexing mystery. Young ladies of Miss Eleanor's standing did not simply vanish for hours, nor did they smell of common art supplies. Lord Harrington, though generally preoccupied with his own affairs, also sensed a coolness in Eleanor's demeanor. Her polite acceptance of his affections felt increasingly distant, her responses mechanical. He attributed it, at first, to bridal nerves, a common affliction among society's daughters, but as the wedding date drew nearer, and Eleanor's evasiveness became more pronounced, a prickle of annoyance, then suspicion, began to fester. He was not a man accustomed to being denied or dismissed, and the subtle shift in his fiancée's attention was deeply unsettling to his considerable pride. One afternoon, Agnes, tasked with laying out Eleanor's afternoon dress, discovered a folded piece of parchment tucked within a volume of Tennyson on Eleanor's bedside table. Curiosity, a powerful mistress, overcame her ingrained discretion. She carefully unfolded it. It was a letter, penned in a bold, masculine hand, adorned with a small, evocative sketch of a stormy sea. The words, though vague enough to avoid outright scandal, spoke of unforeseen obstacles, a dangerous crossing, and a future beyond these shores. Most damningly, it was signed. Tiannis's face paled. A secret lover, and a plan to flee. The implications for the Vance family, and by extension, her own position, were devastating. She refolded the letter meticulously, replacing it exactly as she had found it, her heart thumping with a mixture of fear and righteous indignation. Her loyalty to Lady Vance, her mistress for 30 years, superseded any fleeting sympathy she might have felt for Eleanor's predicament. Such a scandal would ruin the family. It must be stopped. But Agnes was shrewd. She knew direct confrontation would only drive Eleanor further into her illicit affair. She would have to observe, gather more evidence, and present it at the opportune moment to Lady Vance. Eleanor, oblivious to the watchful eyes and the discovery, continued her delicate dance, her courage fueled by Thomas's unwavering devotion and their shared dream. She felt the scrutiny, the subtle questions, the lingering glances, but dismissed them as the natural consequence of her upcoming nuptials. Her world was divided into two distinct realms: the suffocating reality of her family's expectations, and the thrilling, dangerous intimacy of her secret life with Thomas. She walked a tightrope, her balance becoming increasingly precarious. The weight of her secret pressed down on her, yet the burgeoning love within her sustained her, giving her a strength she never knew she possessed. The shadow of suspicion, however, was lengthening, growing darker and more ominous with each passing day. The air in the Vance household, once predictable and calm, now thrummed with an unspoken tension, a silent prelude to an inevitable storm. Eleanor sensed it, a faint chill that seeped into her bones, a premonition of the peril that lurked just beyond the horizon. She knew that the fragile bubble of their secret love could burst at any moment, shattering their dreams and plunging them both into an abyss of scandal and ruin. But for now, buoyed by love and a desperate hope, she continued to gather her courage, preparing for the leap of faith that would either save her or condemn her. The Cavendish Ball, an annual highlight of the London social calendar, was meant to be Eleanor's triumphant debut as the soon-to-be Lady Harrington. It was a spectacle of opulence, crystal chandeliers glittering like captured constellations, the strains of a Strauss waltz filling the air, and a sea of silk, satin, and diamonds. Eleanor, adorned in a gown of shimmering ivory lace, felt like an exhibit, a gilded doll presented for inspection. Lord Harrington, beaming with proprietary pride, kept her firmly by his side, introducing her to influential peers, his hand resting intimately, possessively, at the small of her back. Every compliment, every congratulatory murmur, was another nail in the coffin of her clandestine dreams. Amidst the glittering facade, Eleanor's heart was a hollow drum, beating a frantic rhythm of despair. She smiled, she curtsied, she exchanged polite banalities, her gaze constantly searching the crowd, not for a familiar face, but for an escape. The suffocating weight of her impending marriage pressed down on her, magnified tenfold by the inescapable reality of the evening. She pictured Thomas, alone in his quiet studio, painting, creating, living a life of authentic passion. And the contrast was a searing pain. Then, through a sudden break in the dancing crowd, she saw him, not in the ball itself, of course, but through a tall, arched window overlooking the street. Thomas stood across the square, cloaked in shadow, his gaze fixed on the brightly lit mansion. He had come, a reckless, dangerous act of devotion. Her breath hitched, their eyes met, a silent scream passing between them across the chasm of their worlds. In his eyes, she saw the same anguish, the same desperate love, the same impossible longing. He raised his hand, a fleeting, almost imperceptible gesture of farewell, or perhaps a desperate plea. Then he vanished back into the night. The sight of him, his quiet defiance against the overwhelming opulence of her reality, spurred a desperate resolve within Eleanor. She knew, with chilling certainty, that she could not go through with this marriage. Excusing herself under the pretense of needing fresh air, she slipped away from Lord Harrington's side, her heart pounding. She found a secluded antechamber, dimly lit and rarely used, tucked away behind the main ballroom. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and determination. She knew she had to speak to Thomas, one last time, to reaffirm their bond, to make a plan. Moments later, a tap at the concealed service door startled her. Thomas. He had risked everything, found a way through the servants' entrance, guided by a sympathetic, elderly footman Eleanor had bribed earlier. He stood before her, his face grim, his clothes stark against the backdrop of her shimmering gown. "Eleanor," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I saw you. You looked magnificent and utterly miserable." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, betraying the carefully constructed facade she had maintained all evening. "Oh, Thomas, I cannot do this," she confessed, her voice a desperate plea. "I cannot marry him. My heart belongs to you." She reached out, her gloved hands grasping his, the stark contrast of her fine lace against his work-roughened skin. "We must leave, tonight. I don't care what we lose. I only care about us." Thomas's eyes, usually so full of gentle understanding, were now shadowed with a profound despair. "My dearest Eleanor, tonight is impossible," he said, his voice heavy. "The city is awake, watchful, and I had a visitor, a woman. She asked questions about you, about my commissions." Agnes, the realization hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Their secret was compromised. The shadow had finally become corporeal. Eleanor whispered, her blood running cold. "It does not matter," Thomas replied, his gaze intense. "What matters is that we have been seen. We are being watched. If we try to leave tonight, it will be suicide. We must be intelligent, precise. We need time, Eleanor. More time." He took her face in his hands, his touch tender yet firm. "We cannot lose everything. Not yet. Not our hope. Trust me, we will find a way." Their eyes locked, a desperate promise exchanged in the dim light of the antechamber. He leaned in, pressing a soft, urgent kiss to her forehead, a silent vow amidst the chaos of their impending doom. Then, with a final, lingering look of anguish and resolve, he melted back into the shadows, leaving Eleanor standing alone, her magnificent gown feeling like a heavy shroud, her heart shattered, yet strangely resolute. The grand ball was no longer a celebration, but a battlefield, and the war for their love had just begun. The memory of Thomas's grim warning in the antechamber, coupled with the searing image of Annis's knowing gaze, propelled Eleanor into a state of frantic desperation. The Cavendish ball, her supposed triumph, had instead become the harbinger of their impending doom. Returning to the Vance mansion after the ball, the glittering opulence felt like a suffocating trap. The wedding, now only weeks away, loomed like an execution date. She knew she had to act, to attempt to dismantle her future without revealing the true, devastating reason. The following morning, Eleanor sought an audience with her mother, Lady Vance. In her private study, a room usually reserved for discussions of household accounts and social obligations, Eleanor entered, her heart a drum against her ribs, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Her mother, composed as ever, looked up from a letter, her expression one of mild inquiry. "Eleanor, dear, is there something amiss? You seem rather agitated, Mama," Eleanor began, her voice trembling despite her efforts to steady it. "I must speak with you about Lord Harrington, about the wedding." Lady Vance's elegant brow furrowed slightly. "What about it?" "Everything is proceeding as planned. The invitations have been sent, the dowry settled." Eleanor took a deep breath. I believe it is too soon. I find myself quite overwhelmed by the prospect. Perhaps a postponement, another year, perhaps." She hoped, desperately, that a delay might buy them time, a chance for Thomas to secure his affairs, for them to formulate a safer escape. Her mother's gaze hardened, her porcelain composure cracking. "A postponement? Eleanor, are you quite mad? Such a suggestion at this late stage would be an insult of the highest order to Lord Harrington and his family. It would cast a shadow over our family's reputation, imply weakness, indecision." Lady Vance rose from her chair, her voice acquiring an icy edge. "There is no question of postponement. Your duty is clear. Your father and I have worked tirelessly to secure such a beneficial match. You will not jeopardize it with girlish whimsy." Eleanor pressed on, her desperation overriding caution. "But Mama, I do not believe I love him as a wife should love her husband. I fear I cannot make him happy." She chose her words carefully, hoping to appeal to a deeper, more personal sentiment, however faint. Lady Vance scoffed, a brittle sound devoid of warmth. "Love, my dear love, is a luxury, a fleeting emotion. Respect, duty, shared standing, these are the foundations of a successful marriage. Your duty is to your family, to your position. Sentimentality has no place in such matters." Her mother's words were a cold, hard slap, extinguishing any glimmer of hope Eleanor had held for a gentle intervention. Eleanor's voice rose, edged with a raw anguish she could no longer suppress. "But what of my happiness, Mama, my life?" Lady Vance fixed her with a gaze that brooked no argument. "Your happiness, Eleanor, lies in fulfilling your destiny, in providing a suitable heir, in maintaining the Vance name. Anything less would be a betrayal of everything we have built." She paused, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And let us be quite clear, Eleanor, we have observed your recent distractions, your secretive outings. There is no room for scandal in this family. Do you understand?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, a chilling confirmation of Annis's betrayal. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Her mother knew, or at least suspected enough to issue a stern warning. All hope of a quiet extrication vanished. The plea had failed. Not only had it failed, but it had alerted her mother to her discontent, making her more vulnerable than ever. She knew then that any further resistance would only hasten their downfall, perhaps even provoke her mother into a more thorough investigation that would undoubtedly uncover Thomas. Eleanor retreated, defeated, her spirit crushed. As she left her mother's study, the grand staircase felt like a descent into an abyss, each step taking her further from the life she dreamed of, closer to the life she dreaded. The gilded cage had not only tightened but had become a surveillance post. There would be no escape through conventional means. Her only path now lay in a perilous gamble, an act of sheer defiance that would risk everything. The plea had been made, and brutally rejected. The inevitable loomed larger, darker, and far more menacing than she had ever imagined. Now, she understood, the only way out was through fire. Lady Vance's icy warning had been a thinly veiled threat, a chilling confirmation that Eleanor's secret world was crumbling. The days following her failed plea were a blur of heightened surveillance. Agnes, now emboldened, watched her every move with the zeal of a prison guard. Lord Harrington, sensing a shift in the family dynamics, pressed his courtship with a renewed intensity, his possessiveness growing more pronounced. The wedding preparations, once a background hum, now felt like a drumbeat of approaching doom. The sense of suffocation became unbearable, forcing Eleanor to realize that a passive escape was no longer an option. The final blow came in the form of an unexpected summons to her father's study. Mr. Vance, a man of few words but immense authority, rarely involved himself directly in his daughter's affairs, preferring to leave such feminine matters to his wife. His direct interventions signaled the utmost gravity. He sat behind his imposing desk, a ledger open before him, his gaze stern and unwavering. Lady Vance stood beside him, her expression a cold mask of disapproval. "Eleanor," her father began, his voice low, controlled, but carrying an unmistakable steel. Your mother has informed me of your recent anxieties regarding your engagement, and of certain indiscretions. Eleanor's heart plummeted. They knew, or suspected, enough to corner her. We understand that young women can be susceptible to flights of fancy, to inappropriate influences. His words were a thinly veiled accusation, a dismissal of her feelings as mere girlish folly. However, the family's honor, our standing, is paramount. Lord Harrington is an excellent man, and this alliance is crucial. He pushed a document across the desk, a prenuptial agreement Eleanor had already signed, detailing her limited access to her inheritance, essentially binding her to Lord Harrington. You will marry Lord Harrington on the appointed date, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. There will be no postponements, no further Any attempt to disgrace this family will result in your complete disinheritance, your ostracization from society, and you will find yourself cast out, with nothing but the clothes on your back. We will consider you dead. His gaze, usually distant, was now piercing, unforgiving. Furthermore, Lady Vance interjected, her voice sharp, any undesirable influences will be dealt with severely. The implied threat against Thomas was unmistakable, an icy dagger aimed directly at her heart. This was the ultimatum, a choice between absolute ruin for herself and potentially for Thomas, or a lifetime of emotional imprisonment. Eleanor felt a cold rage begin to simmer beneath her despair. They were not merely binding her, they were extinguishing her. She met her father's unyielding gaze, a silent battle of wills playing out across the polished mahogany desk. She knew then that she could not back down. The cost of remaining was too high. As she left the study, her head held high despite the tremor in her hands, she knew exactly what she had to do. She immediately sent an urgent, coded message to Thomas via Mrs. Gable. The cage is sealed. We must fly. Meet me tonight, midnight, under the old oak, Regent's Park. Burn this. That night, under a sky ablaze with stars, Eleanor met Thomas. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and urgency. Her voice, though low, was filled with a new resolve as she recounted the ultimatum. They know enough, Thomas. They threaten to destroy anyone who stands in our way. We have no choice but to leave, now. She looked at him, her eyes shining with a fierce determination. I have made my decision. I choose you, whatever the cost. Thomas's face was grave, etched with worry, but also with a matching resolve. My dearest Eleanor, he whispered, taking her hands in his. The risks are monumental. We will be hunted. Your family will stop at nothing. Eleanor shook her head. I know, but I would rather face ruin with you than a gilded prison alone. Have you made arrangements? Thomas nodded slowly. I have sold most of my paintings, secured passage on a ship bound for France, under new names, of course. It sails in 3 days. We must move quickly, discreetly. This is our last chance. They stood beneath the ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching towards the indifferent stars. Two conspirators against a world determined to keep them apart. The pact was sealed not with words, but with a shared gaze of unwavering commitment. They would risk everything, reputation, wealth, family, future, for the chance to forge a life together, bound by love rather than duty. The ultimatum, intended to break her, had instead solidified her resolve, pushing her towards a perilous, yet undeniably true, path. Their escape, perilous and uncertain, was now their only hope for freedom. The 3 days leading up to their planned departure were a blur of suppressed panic and meticulous preparation. Eleanor moved through the Vance mansion like a ghost, her every action carefully calibrated. She packed a single, modest trunk, filling it not with the lavish gowns or jewels of her past life, but with sturdy, practical dresses, a few cherished books, and a small, leather-bound sketchbook Thomas had gifted her. Each item was chosen with a silent farewell to her former existence, a deliberate severing of ties. Her family, now hypervigilant, watched her like hawks. Lord Harrington, sensing a final, desperate resistance, refused to leave her side. His presence a constant, suffocating reminder of the future she was desperately trying to escape. Eleanor, however, had learned to become an actress of remarkable skill. She feigned a resurgence of bridal enthusiasm, discussing floral arrangements with her mother, and engaging in polite, albeit mechanical, conversation with her fiancé. Beneath the facade, her mind was a whirlwind of logistics, of escape routes, of the terrifying leap into the unknown. Thomas, meanwhile, was making his own preparations. He had liquidated his meager assets, selling his finest paintings to a discreet dealer who asked no questions. He secured passage on a cargo ship, the Serafina, bound for Le Havre, France, under assumed names, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Smith. He packed his art supplies, his most treasured brushes, and a few canvases, the tools of his passion, the foundation of their new life. The risk was immense. Discovery meant not only the ruin of his reputation but potentially imprisonment for abducting an heiress. Their plan relied on a network of quiet allies. Mrs. Gable, the flower vendor, became their courier, delivering final, urgent messages. The elderly footman, Jenkins, deeply sympathetic to Eleanor's plight and quietly resentful of the Vance family's snobbery, was bribed to ensure the servant's entrance would be unlocked at the precise moment of Eleanor's escape. A hired carriage, driven by a man known only as Silas, a former stable hand with a reputation for discretion, would wait in a secluded alleyway near the mansion in the pre-dawn hours of their departure. The night of their flight arrived, cloaked in a thick London fog that felt like both a blessing and a curse. The city was hushed, muffled by the swirling mist, reducing visibility to mere feet. Eleanor, dressed in a plain cloak over her traveling dress, descended the grand staircase at precisely 3 a.m., her heart thumping so loudly she feared it would betray her. She carried her single trunk, its weight a metaphor for the life she was leaving behind. Her father's study door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping, and she heard the faint murmur of voices, her parents, perhaps, or Lord Harrington, discussing some final wedding detail. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. Jenkins, a stoic figure in the shadows of the service hallway, nodded almost imperceptibly as Eleanor approached the side door. The latch was already on. She slipped out into the fog-shrouded alley, the chill biting at her skin. The air was heavy with the smell of damp brick and desperation. The carriage, a dark silhouette against the swirling gray, was waiting. Silas, a shadowy figure, opened the door, and Eleanor clambered inside, her trunk following her. She did not look back. There was nothing to look back at, only the crumbling edifice of a life she no longer wished to inhabit. As the carriage wheels rattled softly over the cobbled stones, taking her further and further from her gilded cage, a wave of profound relief, mixed with a dizzying terror, washed over her. She was free, but freedom, she knew, came with a heavy price. Thomas was waiting for her at the docks, a beacon in the uncertainty. Their perilous gambit of flight had begun, a desperate dash towards a future painted in moonlight and forged in defiance. The chasm between her old life and the unknown stretched vast and menacing. Yet the love that fueled her courage was stronger than any fear. Their journey into the perilous unknown had begun. The journey to the docks was fraught with a silent, heart-stopping tension. Every clatter of hooves, every distant shout in the fog-laden streets, sent a jolt of fear through Eleanor. Silas, the coachman, drove with a practiced discretion, weaving through the labyrinthian back alleys, avoiding the main thoroughfares where a lady of Eleanor's bearing, even in disguise, might attract unwanted attention. Yet, despite their careful planning, fate, or perhaps human malice, had a cruel twist in store. As the carriage approached the grimy, bustling docklands, the fog began to thin, revealing the hulking silhouettes of cargo ships against the pre-dawn sky. Eleanor peered anxiously through the window, searching for a sign of Thomas for the Serafina. Suddenly, a sharp, authoritative voice cut through the damp air. "Halt, in the Queen's name." The carriage lurched to a stop. The stern-faced constables, their uniforms stark against the gray morning light, emerged from the thinning fog, blocking their path. Behind them, standing smugly, her mouth set in a grim line of triumph, was Agnes. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Betrayal. The word echoed in her mind, chilling her to the bone. Agnes, her loyal maid for years, had followed her, had informed the authorities. The price of her loyalty to Lady Vance was Eleanor's freedom, and perhaps her future. "Miss Vance," Agnes stated, her voice devoid of any warmth, "your parents send their deepest regrets, but they cannot allow this folly. You are to return home immediately." Eleanor stared at her, a profound sense of disbelief and hurt warring with the terror gripping her. "Agnes, how could you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Agnes merely met her gaze with an unrepentant stare. "My loyalty is to the Vance family, miss, to its honor. You were bringing ruin upon us all." The constables, burly men with grim expressions, moved to open the carriage door. Eleanor felt the surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment of truth. She refused to yield. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows of a nearby warehouse, his face etched with a mix of fury and despair. Thomas, he had seen the commotion, had seen Agnes, had understood the desperate gravity of the situation. He strode forward, his gaze fixed on Eleanor, ignoring the constables. "Eleanor," he called out, his voice raw with concern. The constables immediately turned their attention to him. "And who might you be, sir?" one of them demanded, his hand moving towards his truncheon. Thomas ignored him, his eyes only for Eleanor. "You must go, Eleanor. Find another way," he urged, his voice desperate. He knew that if he was apprehended with her, the charges would be far more severe. But it was too late. Agnes pointed a finger directly at Thomas. "That's him, officers, the scoundrel who has corrupted Miss Vance, the artist." The constables moved swiftly, grabbing Thomas. He struggled, attempting to fight them off, his gaze still desperately fixed on Eleanor, a silent plea for her to flee. But she was paralyzed, watching the scene unfold with a horror that rooted her to the spot. "No," Eleanor cried out, her voice a raw, desperate sound. She tried to open the carriage door, to rush to Thomas's side, but Silas, surprisingly, held her back. "Stay, miss. You cannot help him now. You will only condemn yourself." His voice was quiet, urgent, tinged with a reluctant practicality. He knew that if Eleanor was seen actively resisting with Thomas, her fate would be sealed. She would lose all chance of mitigating the scandal, of ever seeing the light of day again. Thomas, outnumbered and outmatched, was quickly subdued, his arms roughly bound. His eyes, as they locked with Eleanor's one last time, conveyed a silent message of love, of sacrifice, of profound regret. Then he was dragged away, disappearing into the pre-dawn gloom, his figure swallowed by the shadows, his cries of protest muffled. Eleanor watched him go, tears streaming down her face, a silent scream tearing through her soul. Her heart felt as though it had been ripped from her chest. The perilous gambit had failed. Betrayal had struck, swift and merciless, and in its wake, Thomas was lost. Her freedom, her love, her very hope for a future, seemed to vanish with him into the cold, unforgiving dawn. The journey back to the Vance mansion was a journey through a nightmare. Eleanor sat rigid in the carriage, her body trembling, her mind replaying Thomas's capture, his desperate plea, the look of utter despair in his eyes. Agnes sat opposite her, an impassive sentinel, her betrayal a heavy shroud in the small space. Upon their arrival, the mansion, usually a beacon of quiet opulence, felt like a tomb. Her parents, dressed in their finest, awaited her in the drawing room, their faces a thundercloud of fury and shame. "Eleanor Vance," her father's voice boomed, shattering the silence. "What have you done?" Lady Vance, usually composed, was pale with indignation. "A scandal, a public humiliation. Do you have any idea what you have brought upon this family?" Eleanor stood before them, defenseless, exhausted, but with a core of defiant grief. "I tried to escape a life I did not want," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I tried to find happiness." "Happiness," her mother shrieked. "You speak of happiness when you have jeopardized our entire lineage, our reputation, everything we have built." Her father, his face purple with rage, paced the room. "Lord Harrington is beside himself. His family is demanding explanations. The newspapers will have a field day." He stopped before her, his finger jabbing accusingly. "And that common ruffian, he will be made to pay dearly for his presumption. Do you understand the charges he faces? Abduction, ruin." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "He did not abduct me. I went willingly," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "It was my choice." Her father merely scoffed. "A foolish choice, influenced by a manipulative cad. You will never see him again, Eleanor. He will be imprisoned, perhaps deported. His career, such as it was, will be utterly destroyed." The words were daggers, each one twisting in her wounded heart. The reality of Thomas's fate, a direct consequence of her actions, was almost unbearable. For Eleanor, the consequences were swift and brutal. The wedding was, of course, cancelled amidst a flurry of carefully managed public statements about Eleanor's nervous indisposition and the mutual agreement to call off the engagement. The truth, however, seeped through the polite society like venom, whispered in drawing rooms and hinted at in gossip columns. Eleanor Vance, the once coveted heiress, became a pariah. Her reputation, meticulously cultivated over 2 decades, was shattered. She was confined to her rooms, a prisoner in her own home. All her correspondence was intercepted, her outings restricted to supervised drives in a closed carriage. away from prying eyes. Her father threatened disinheritance, but a lingering sense of familial duty, or perhaps a desperate attempt to control the narrative, prevented him from completely disowning her. Instead, she was exiled to the family's remote country estate in Northumberland. Far from London society, her life a bleak tapestry woven from shame and isolation, she would live out her days as a spinster, a cautionary tale, a fading ghost of a once promising debutante. Weeks turned into months. The silence of the country estate was a constant reminder of her loss. She spent her days in the sprawling gardens, the beauty of nature, a stark contrast to the ugliness of her despair. She thought of Thomas constantly, tormented by questions about his fate. Was he in prison? Had he been deported? Was he painting? Was he alive? The separation was a physical ache, a gaping wound that refused to heal. She wrote letters to him in her mind, pouring out her heart, knowing they would never reach him. One gray afternoon, a small package arrived, addressed simply to Eleanor. It contained a single, small, rolled-up canvas. There was no note. With trembling hands, Eleanor unrolled it. It was a painting of the old oak in Regent's Park, their meeting spot, but etched onto its bark, almost imperceptibly, were two initials, EV plus TM, and beneath it, a single, vibrant pressed violet, carefully glued to the canvas. A gasp escaped her lips. He was alive, he remembered. The painting was a beacon of hope in her desolate existence, a silent message from the man who had lost everything for her, and who, somehow, still believed in their love. The separation was brutal, the scandal devastating, but the love, it seemed, was an unyielding force, a fragile spark refusing to be extinguished. Eleanor's exile to the windswept country estate in Northumberland became her new reality. The imposing house, once a summer retreat, was now her gilded prison, its vast gardens and desolate moors a stark reflection of her internal landscape. The scandal, though publicly muted by her family's formidable influence, had irrevocably shattered her standing. She was the unfortunate Miss Vance, the one who had suffered a nervous collapse, a polite fiction masking a devastating truth. Invitations ceased, old friends drifted away, and the vibrant life of London society became a distant, mocking echo. Her parents, though refusing to completely disinherit her, ensured her financial dependence was absolute, controlling every penny, every decision. They hoped that time, solitude, and the bleakness of her new existence would cure her of her romantic delusions, but they underestimated the strength of Eleanor's spirit and the enduring power of her love for Thomas. The small canvas painting of the old oak, with its etched initials and pressed violet, became her most treasured possession, a tangible link to the man who had sacrificed so much for her. She kept it hidden, wrapped in silk, within a locked drawer, a secret heart beating within her desolate life. Eleanor, no longer tethered by social obligations, found a new, quiet purpose in her solitude. She delved into the estate's neglected library, devouring books on art, philosophy, and history. She sketched the wild beauty of the moors, the gnarled trees, the dramatic coastlines, finding solace and expression in charcoal and watercolor. Her art, once a polite accomplishment, transformed into a raw, deeply personal outlet. A silent conversation with Thomas, wherever he might be. She honed her craft, her strokes gaining confidence and emotional depth, mirroring the inner strength she was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding. Years passed, each one marked by the changing seasons and the unchanging ache in her heart. She heard nothing concrete of Thomas. Rumors occasionally reached her through the sparse local gossip, carried by the infrequent visits of her distant relatives. Vague whispers of a talented English artist making a name for himself in Paris, known for his evocative street scenes and profound portraits. Eleanor clung to these fragments, imagining him thriving, creating, living the life they had dreamed of. The thought that he was free, even without her, brought a bittersweet comfort. She never married. Suitors, few and far between, quickly retreated from her quiet intensity, her shadowed eyes, and her unshakable refusal. Her parents eventually accepted her fate as a spinster, a tragic consequence of her indisposition, though the lingering resentment never fully dissipated. Eleanor, however, found a strange kind of liberation in her spinster. It meant she remained, in her heart, entirely Thomas's. Her life, though outwardly marked by loss and solitude, was inwardly rich with memory, art, and an enduring, fiercely guarded love. she channeled her loneliness into philanthropy, quietly supporting local charities, establishing a small art school for the village children, using her discreet allowance to fund the dreams of others. Her kindness became her reputation. Replacing the whispers of scandal, she found purpose in helping those less fortunate, finding a quiet dignity in a life that had once seemed utterly ruined. The vibrant colors of Thomas's painting of the old oak began to feel less like a memory of what was lost, and more like a promise of what endued the power of creation, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unyielding strength of a love that had, against all odds, survived. Eleanor Vance lived a life of quiet defiance, a testament to the love that had cost her everything, yet had given her a profound sense of self. She often walked the blustery moors, her gaze sweeping across the vast, untamed landscape, imagining Thomas by her side, sketching, conversing, sharing the silent beauty. She may have lost her social standing, her wealth, and the conventional future laid out for her, but she had gained her soul, and in her heart, the love for Thomas, a love that transcended distance and time, remained, a private, luminous flame, forever burning brightly, a silent, beautiful rebellion against a world that had tried, and failed, to extinguish it. The decades that followed Eleanor's exile unfolded with a quiet, inexorable rhythm. The name Vance, once synonymous with power and impeccable lineage, eventually faded into the annals of history, a casualty of changing times and the lingering whispers of scandal. Eleanor's parents passed away, their final years marked by a grudging acceptance of their daughter's solitary fate. Lord Harrington went on to marry a suitable, if unremarkable, heiress, his life a testament to convention, devoid of the passionate drama he had nearly encountered. Eleanor, however, blossomed in her self-imposed solitude. Her art, once a private solace, gained a quiet reputation. She contributed sketches and watercolors to small, obscure journals, signed with an ambiguous E, her landscapes capturing the rugged beauty of the Northumbrian coast with a depth of feeling that resonated with a discerning few. Her small art school for village children flourished, a place where creativity was nurtured, a stark contrast to the stifling education she herself had received. She became a beloved, if enigmatic, figure in the local community, known for her gentle wisdom and her unexpected, profound kindness. Her connection to Thomas, though unspoken and geographically separated, remained the bedrock of her existence. The small painting of the old oak continued to be her most sacred possession. Its simple imagery, a potent reminder of their shared dreams and the ultimate sacrifice. Whenever a new rumor of T. Miller, the acclaimed English artist in Paris, reached her ears, whispers of his increasing fame, his unique ability to capture the soul of his subjects, a bittersweet warmth would spread through her. She celebrated his success from afar, knowing that his artistic triumph was a testament to the very spirit that had drawn her to him, a spirit she had helped set free. One crisp autumn afternoon, many years after Thomas's capture, a package arrived at the estate. It was not from Thomas, but from a prominent London art dealer, seeking her expertise. Tucked within the correspondence was an exhibition catalogue for a major retrospective of Thomas Miller's work in Paris. Eleanor's heart hammered as she turned the pages. There, among his celebrated Parisian street scenes and portraits, was a painting that took her breath away. A vibrant, deeply emotional portrait of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with shadowed, wistful eyes, wearing an ivory lace ball gown. The title, The Gilded Cage, her portrait. He had painted her from memory, capturing not just her likeness, but the very essence of her despair and defiance on that fateful night. The inclusion of her portrait, titled so evocatively, was a silent, public declaration, a brave acknowledgement of their shared history. It was a testament to a love that had defied convention, survived separation, and ultimately found expression through art. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of profound gratitude and a bittersweet joy. He had never forgotten. He had found a way to tell their story, to weave their forbidden love into the tapestry of his enduring legacy. Eleanor Vance passed away peacefully in her sleep many years later, a respected if reclusive woman, her spirit finally free. In her will, she left a substantial endowment to the local art school and, surprisingly, to an anonymous charity supporting struggling artists in Paris. Among her private effects, carefully preserved, was the small painting of the old oak and the exhibition catalogue, with the gilded cage proudly displayed. Her story, once a potential scandal, transformed into a powerful legacy of defiance, resilience, and a love that truly did transcend everything. Her love for Thomas Miller had cost her her old life, her family's approval, her social standing. She had indeed lost everything society valued, but in losing everything, she had found herself, forged an authentic life, and preserved a love that burned brighter than any public acclaim. Their story, etched not in history books, but in art and in the hearts of those who understood, became a quiet, powerful testament to the enduring human spirit, a love story where losing everything meant gaining the truest, most profound freedom of all. The legend of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller, though never officially documented in grand historical texts, continued to echo through the quieter chambers of artistic and local lore. Thomas Miller's reputation as a master painter solidified with time, his works sought after by collectors and displayed in prestigious galleries across Europe. Art historians would pore over his iconic portrait, The Gilded Cage, speculating about the identity of the mysterious sitter, noting its profound emotional depth and unique resonance within his oeuvre. No official connection was ever made, no scandalous headlines ever resurfaced, yet the painting itself became a silent testament to a forbidden love. Eleanor's own legacy, though more subdued, was equally enduring. The small art school she founded in Northumberland blossomed into a respected institution, nurturing generations of local talent, many of whom never knew the true identity of its quiet benefactress. Her personal sketches, discovered after her death, revealed a profound artistic voice, a raw honesty that had been cultivated in solitude. These were eventually exhibited posthumously, charming critics with their evocative portrayal of the wild English landscape, hinting at a hidden world of emotion and longing. The true connection between Eleanor Vance, the reclusive benefactor and landscape artist, and Thomas Miller, the celebrated Parisian master, remained a secret for decades, guarded by time and the discreet silence of the art world. Their story became a whispered tale among a select few, a romantic enigma for those who observed the subtle nuances of art and life. It was a love story that had paid the ultimate price in terms of societal acceptance and conventional happiness, yet had triumphed through the enduring power of creation and an unbreakable spiritual bond. Modern scholarship, fueled by meticulous research into personal letters and previously uncatalogued works, began to piece together fragments of their narrative. An archivist, delving into old Vance family papers, uncovered a trove of Eleanor's personal journals, alongside the small painting of the old oak. Cross-referencing these with Thomas Miller's early, unsigned sketches and his later, more overtly emotional works, a compelling picture emerged. The coded messages, the shared motifs, the unmistakable emotional resonance, the evidence slowly coalesced, revealing the profound, passionate affair that had nearly brought two powerful families to their knees. The revelations sent a quiet ripple through the art world. Suddenly, The Gilded Cage acquired a new, poignant meaning. It was no longer just a beautiful portrait. It was a deeply personal confession, a testament to a love that had defied the rigid conventions of Victorian society. Eleanor's landscape art was re-evaluated, understood now as a powerful outpouring of a soul in exile, a dialogue with the natural world that mirrored her internal journey. The true triumph of Eleanor and Thomas's story lay not in a conventional happy ending, but in the enduring power of their love to shape their lives and leave an indelible mark on the world. Even in separation, they had lost their social standing, their wealth, their public acceptance, but they had never lost each other in spirit. Their love, born in secrecy and forged in sacrifice, became a testament to authenticity, to the courage of choosing one's heart over the dictates of society. Their story stands as a quiet, yet powerful reminder that true love, though it may exact a heavy toll, can also be the catalyst for profound transformation, leading individuals to discover their deepest selves and leave behind a legacy far richer and more meaningful than any inherited title or fortune. The echoes of their forbidden love story, etched in canvas and whispered through generations, continue to inspire, a timeless testament to the human heart's unyielding quest for freedom and authentic connection. Their love, though hidden, forever changed them, and in turn, changed a small part of the world they inhabited, ensuring that even in loss, there was triumph, and in sacrifice, enduring love. The passage of years, rather than dimming the embers of their love, only solidified its legend, albeit one whispered in hushed tones among connoisseurs of art and history. The story of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller was a testament to a truth, often overlooked by grand narratives. that some loves are so profound, so inherently defiant, they carve their own space in history, even if they must exist in shadow. Their tale was not one of overt triumph over adversity in the conventional sense, but a more subtle, deeply human victory, the triumph of individual spirit against an unyielding societal machine. Thomas Miller, in his long and illustrious career, never publicly acknowledged his muse. Yet, those who truly understood his body of work could see Eleanor's influence everywhere, in the particular way he captured light, in the expressive depth of his portraits, in the underlying melancholy and resilience that permeated even his most vibrant canvases. His success, achieved far from the judgmental gaze of London society, was a quiet vindication of his love, a demonstration that passion and talent could indeed forge a new path, even after losing everything in the eyes of others. Eleanor, too, found her own quiet triumphs. Her exile to Northumberland, initially a punishment, became the crucible in which her true self was forged. Stripped of the trappings of her class, she discovered an inner strength, an artistic voice, and a deep well of empathy that would have remained untapped in her gilded cage. Her local art school, a lasting legacy, produced artists who, perhaps unknowingly, carried forward a piece of her defiant spirit, a belief in art as a medium for truth and connection, regardless of social standing. Their shared narrative, painstakingly pieced together by later historians, revealed a profound and heartbreaking reality, that while they had been physically separated, their souls had remained inextricably linked. The letters, the hidden painting, the subtle allusions in Thomas's works, these fragments formed a mosaic of a love that had refused to be extinguished by scandal, class, or forced separation. They had indeed lost everything that their society deemed valuable: reputation, conventional marriage, shared public life. But in that loss, they had gained something far more precious: authenticity, artistic freedom, and a love that was pure and unadulterated by societal expectations. The true legacy of Eleanor and Thomas was not merely a romantic tragedy, but a powerful exploration of societal constraints and individual rebellion. It questioned the very definition of loss and gain. Was it truly a loss to shed a life of hollow privilege for one of genuine passion and creative fulfillment? Was it a loss to choose profound, albeit forbidden, love over a marriage of convenience and social status? Their story, revealed through the lens of history, dared to suggest otherwise. Their love became a symbol not of reckless abandonment, but of profound courage. The courage to follow one's heart, even when the path led through ostracism and hardship. The courage to endure separation with unwavering fidelity of spirit. The courage to find solace and expression in art, transforming personal agony into universal beauty. The world had tried to break them, to erase their love, but instead it had inadvertently elevated them, turning their private heartbreak into a timeless narrative of human resilience. Eleanor and Thomas, though they never publicly reunited, found a way to live a life true to themselves and to each other, through their art, their hidden communications, and their enduring memory. Their story, once a scandal, became a quiet testament to the unyielding power of love, proving that some connections are so strong, so vital, that they can defy ruin itself, creating a legacy that echoes through the ages, a powerful, unforgettable melody in the grand symphony of human experience. The story of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller stands as a poignant reminder that authenticity often comes at a steep price, particularly in societies bound by rigid conventions. Their love, born from an undeniable connection and nurtured in secrecy, dared to challenge the very foundations of their late 19th century world. For Eleanor, it meant renouncing a life of inherited privilege, a guaranteed future of comfort and social standing. For Thomas, it risked his burgeoning career, his freedom, and his reputation, all built on years of tireless artistic dedication. The initial loss was catastrophic in the eyes of their peers. Eleanor endured public humiliation, familial condemnation, and permanent social exile. She was stripped of her social identity, reduced to a cautionary tale. Thomas faced legal repercussions, the destruction of his career prospects in England, and forced anonymity. Their separation was a brutal, tangible consequence of their choices, a testament to the power of the institutions they had defied. Yet, in this profound material and social loss, they both found a deeper, more profound form of gain. Eleanor's exile to Northumberland, initially a punishment, became her crucible. Stripped of the superficial demands of society, she found the space to cultivate her true passions. Her artistic talent, once a mere hobby, blossomed into a serious pursuit. Her empathetic nature, previously confined to polite pleasantries, found expression in philanthropy and community building. She forged an identity not handed to her by birth, but earned through resilience, kindness, and an unwavering commitment to her inner truth. The price she paid was immense, but the authentic self she discovered was invaluable. Thomas, too, underwent a transformative journey. Forced to leave England under a cloud of scandal, he rebuilt his life and career in France. The initial hardship and anonymity pushed him to refine his craft, to imbue his work with an even greater depth of emotion and understanding. He became T.I. Miller, the acclaimed Parisian artist, his genius unfettered by the social prejudices of his homeland. His art became his voice, a silent, powerful testament to the experiences that had shaped him, including his profound love for Eleanor. He had lost his ties to English society, but he gained international renown and artistic freedom. The price of their authenticity was not merely societal ostracism or physical separation. It was also the lingering ache of a love that could never be publicly acknowledged. They lived parallel lives, connected by the invisible threads of memory, art, and an unyielding spiritual bond. Their communication became symbolic, a hidden painting, a meaningful title, a shared artistic motif, a secret language understood only by them, and later, by the historians who painstakingly pieced together their narrative. Ultimately, their story is a powerful exploration of the human cost of defying convention, but also of the profound rewards of living authentically. They may have lost everything in the eyes of their rigidly structured world, but they gained something far more enduring: integrity, self-discovery, and a love that transcended societal boundaries and the limitations of their era. Their legacy is not one of material wealth or social status, but of courage, artistic expression, and the unwavering belief in the power of the human heart to seek truth and connection, even in the face of ruin. Their journey reminds us that true freedom often lies in the willingness to pay the price of one's own truth, no matter how steep. Eleanor Vance's life. From the moment she was born into the suffocating opulence of late 19th century London society, was meticulously charted. Her destiny was to be a lady of standing, a wife who would secure alliances and produce heirs, all within the confines of a gilded cage. Yet, the forbidden love she nurtured for Thomas Miller shattered these expectations, forcing her onto a path far removed from her preordained existence. In losing everything society held dear, she stumbled upon a profound, unexpected freedom. The initial years of her exile in Northumberland were indeed a period of deep mourning for the life she had lost, for the love that was brutally severed, and for the choices that had brought her to such a desolate place. The vast, empty rooms of the country estate, the isolation from any familiar face, and the judgmental silence of her remaining family were a heavy burden. But beneath the layers of despair, a seed of resilience began to take root. Eleanor, stripped of her societal mask, began to truly see herself and the world. For the first time, she discovered her own voice through art. Her landscapes of the wild moors and turbulent coastlines imbued with an emotional depth that transcended mere representation. Her quiet philanthropy, her dedication to the local community, and her establishment of an art school for disadvantaged children gave her a sense of purpose far more meaningful than any social engagement. She found a new form of currency in kindness, compassion, and the sharing of knowledge, values that stood in stark contrast to the transactional nature of her former world. This new freedom was not a freedom from consequences, but a freedom within them. It was the freedom to define her own worth, to choose her own pursuits, and to live a life guided by integrity rather than obligation. She was no longer a pawn in a larger social game. She was the architect of her own quiet, dignified existence. The societal shackles had been broken, replaced by the self-imposed disciplines of her art and her service to others. Her connection to Thomas, though maintained through the unspoken language of art and memory, was a vital component of this newfound freedom. Knowing that he too was thriving, that his talent had found its rightful expression, even in separation, brought her immense solace. His portrait, The Gilded Cage, a public yet coded declaration of their love, affirmed her choices, a powerful testament to their shared defiance. It was a love that had demanded everything, but in return, it had given them the truest form of liberation, the freedom to be authentically themselves. Eleanor's journey became a powerful narrative of self-reinvention. She learned that genuine happiness was not found in external validation or material possessions, but in the cultivation of inner peace, purpose, and an unyielding spirit. Her life, once a predictable path to a secure, albeit soulless, future, became an unpredictable adventure of self-discovery. She traded a gilded cage for a wild, untamed landscape, both internal and external, finding a freedom that resonated deeply with the natural beauty she now cherished. Ultimately, the story of Eleanor Vance is a profound testament to the idea that losing everything can sometimes be the greatest gain. It was a painful, often agonizing process, but it led her to a life of authenticity, purpose, and an enduring love that defied all societal expectations. She broke free from the gilded cage, not by escaping without consequence, but by embracing the consequences, and in doing so, forged a new, more profound definition of freedom, a freedom of spirit that no societal pressure could ever truly imprison. The love story of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller, though never splashed across tabloid headlines or celebrated in society pages, achieved an immortality far beyond the transient glories of their time. It was an immortality woven into the very fabric of their art, etched into the silent spaces between brushstrokes, and whispered through the enduring influence they both left on the world. Their narrative, once a potential scandal, became a profound testament to the unyielding power of the human heart to seek connection and express truth. Even in the face of profound adversity, Thomas Miller's The Gilded Cage remains his most iconic and enigmatic work, a masterpiece that continues to captivate viewers with its haunting beauty and emotional depth. Its true story, now understood by a discerning public, elevates it beyond mere portraiture. It is a declaration, a silent act of defiance, a love letter painted across time and circumstance. The painting itself is a paradox, a depiction of confinement that paradoxically expresses the artist's profound freedom and unwavering devotion. It speaks volumes of a love that was too vast, too powerful, to be contained by societal norms. Eleanor's own artistic contributions, once relegated to obscure journals and local exhibitions, gained renewed appreciation with the unearthing of her journals and the full context of her life. Her evocative landscapes of Northumberland, initially seen as mere studies of nature, are now recognized as deeply personal expressions of resilience, solitude, and an enduring connection to the natural world that mirrored her internal journey. They are visual poems of a soul in exile, yet one that found profound beauty and purpose in its isolation. Her art, like Thomas's, became an immortal canvas of her love, a dialogue with the world that transcended words. The greatest testament to their love lies in its transformative power. It forced Eleanor to shed a life of unfulfilling privilege and embrace a path of authenticity, creativity, and compassionate service. It propelled Thomas to a level of artistic genius that might never have been realized had he remained constrained by English society. They both lost everything society valued, but gained something immeasurable: the freedom to be truly themselves, to create from the heart, and to forge lives of profound meaning and integrity. Their story challenges conventional notions of success and failure. In the eyes of their contemporaries, their choices led to ruin. Yet, from a historical perspective, their lives stand as triumphs of individual spirit. They chose love, authenticity, and artistic expression over societal approval, wealth, and status. And in doing so, they created legacies that continue to resonate. Long after the societal structures that sought to confine them have crumbled, the immortal canvas of love is not just about Eleanor and Thomas. It is about the universal human longing for connection, the courage to defy expectations, and the enduring power of art to express the deepest truths of the heart. Their story reminds us that love, even when forbidden, can be a profound catalyst for personal growth and societal change, whispering across generations, inspiring those who dare to seek a life less ordinary. Their love, though denied a public narrative in their lifetime, found its true, eternal voice in the timeless language of art, forever captivating, forever inspiring, a beautiful, immortal echo through the ages. The enduring saga of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller transcends the mere recounting of a forbidden romance. It serves as a powerful testament to the reimagining of a world, both personal and societal. Their choices, made in the face of overwhelming odds, became an unwitting blueprint for a different kind of existence, one where the heart's truth held more weight than inherited privilege or societal decree. In the rigid landscape of late Victorian England, their audacity was revolutionary, a quiet rebellion that laid the groundwork for future generations to question and eventually dismantle similar strictures. Transformation from a debutante destined for a gilded cage to a philanthropic artist and educator illustrated a profound shift in personal agency. She did not merely escape her fate, she actively redefined what it meant to be a woman of substance. Her quiet contributions to her community, her unwavering commitment to fostering creativity in others, and her dignified solitude became a living example that a life outside conventional expectations could be rich, purposeful, and deeply fulfilling. She reimagined her own world, brick by brick, not through outward conquest, but through inner fortitude and authentic expression. Thomas Miller, through his artistic genius, similarly reimagined the world around him. His move to Paris, though forced, liberated him from the provincialism of English society, allowing his art to flourish without constraint. His ability to capture the raw essence of humanity, to find beauty in the everyday, and to imbue his subjects with profound emotional depth, offered viewers a new lens through which to perceive their own realities. His art became a bridge between disparate worlds, a testament to the universal language of human experience, subtly challenging the class divisions he had once fiercely battled. Together, though physically separated, they cultivated a love that reimagined the very concept of connection. It was a love that proved adaptable, resilient, capable of transcending distance, societal censure, and the passage of time. Their shared artistic endeavors, Alana's landscapes echoing Thomas's emotional depth, and his portrait of her, the gilded cage, serving as a public, yet coded, declaration, became a silent dialogue, a continuous conversation that defied their forced separation. They found ways to communicate across the void, building a spiritual world together that no external force could penetrate. Their story, rediscovered and celebrated by contemporary historians and art enthusiasts, invites a reimagining of historical narratives. It challenges the notion that only grand political events or celebrated figures shape history. Instead, it highlights the profound impact of individual choices, of personal courage, and of the quiet, revolutionary acts of love and authenticity. It demonstrates how seemingly small, private acts of defiance can create ripples that eventually transform societal understanding and open pathways to greater freedom for all. The legacy of Eleanor and Thomas is a world reimagined not as a utopia, but as a place where the boundaries of class, gender, and expectation can be challenged. A world where art serves as a powerful vehicle for truth, and a world where love, even when forbidden and costly, can lead to the most profound forms of self-discovery and enduring impact. Their story continues to inspire, a timeless beacon reminding us that the human spirit, driven by love and a quest for authenticity, possesses an extraordinary capacity to reimagine and rebuild, not just individual lives, but the very fabric of the world itself, one courageous choice at a time. The narrative of Eleanor Vance and Thomas Miller, far from being a mere historical anecdote, represents a quiet revolution of the heart, a profound uprising against the societal norms that sought to dictate love, life, and destiny. Their revolution was not fought with swords or manifestos, but with ink, canvas, stolen glances, and the unwavering conviction of two souls daring to choose authenticity over expectation. In a world where every aspect of life was compartmentalized by class, gender, and propriety, their story became a testament to the radical power of personal choice. Eleanor's journey epitomized this revolution. Her defiance was not loud or public in the way of suffragettes, but deeply internal and profoundly transformative. She refused to allow her heart to be bartered, her spirit to be caged, or her mind to be dulled by the superficialities of her class. Her choice to pursue a forbidden love, and subsequently to embrace a life of solitude dedicated to art and philanthropy, was a silent act of rebellion against the patriarchal and class-based structures that sought to define her. She proved that a woman, even one stripped of her societal standing, could forge a life of immense purpose and dignity on her own terms. Thomas Miller, through his art, enacted his own form of revolution, born into a world that offered limited pathways for a man of his background. He leveraged his talent and passion to transcend the barriers of his birth. His art, particularly his poignant portrayals of ordinary people and his emotionally charged landscapes, challenged the academic and elitist norms of the art world. He championed a realism that sought truth in the everyday, democratizing beauty and giving voice to the unseen. His success in a foreign land was not just a personal triumph, but a subtle, yet powerful, indictment of the restrictive society he had left behind. Their love, itself, was the core of this quiet revolution. It was a love that dared to cross the uncrossable chasm of class. A love that cherished intellectual and emotional connection above all material considerations. It was a love that understood the profound cost of its existence, yet refused to be extinguished. Their relationship, though never formalized or publicly acknowledged in their lifetime, became a symbol of resistance, a testament to the idea that genuine affection and mutual respect could flourish even in the most hostile of environments. This revolution of the heart, unfolding in stolen moments and coded messages, ultimately contributed to the broader shifts in societal attitudes that would emerge in the decades to come. It was part of a larger, incremental movement towards greater individual freedom, artistic expression, and a more nuanced understanding of human relationships. Their story, once a private tragedy, became a powerful narrative of courage, resilience, and the enduring human quest for self-determination. Eleanor and Thomas's legacy is a vibrant tapestry woven from defiance, sacrifice, and an unyielding belief in the power of authenticity. They taught us that true wealth lies not in inherited fortunes, but in the richness of one's inner life. That true status is earned through integrity, not birthright. And that love, in its purest form, can be the most potent force for personal and subtle societal change. Their quiet revolution, though it cost them everything society valued, gifted them, and generations to come, with the invaluable lesson that a life lived with heart and truth is a life truly lived, an immortal testament to the enduring power of a courageous spirit.